My second talk for the evening is diversity in game jams. So let's dive in. All right. So our tagline: make games, make friends, make a difference. Help everyone. So our goal at Tech Valley Game Space is to help everyone in the capital region make a game. Now, it's a little unrealistic, but nevertheless, we do try to accommodate everyone, and that includes one of the reasons we have this goal is to increase diversity in the game creation community. So we want more, diversity in the game, in games that are being created, in the people who are making the games. So we've kind of created a lot of programs and events to achieve these goals. Sorry, I'm getting out of breath here. So many programs. So in particular, we have our Include game jams. So the Include series was actually thought up by Jamie Stevenson. And the first two here are actually before my time: Local History Game Jam and River Jam. These are the first two. I believe they were focused mostly on women. Is that correct, Taro?
The River Jam was indeed in support of women, and the Local History Game Jam was in support of just local history. So
for a while, including initially when I was joining up with this community, these sort of kind of fell by the wayside a little bit. They took a lot to set up. They do take a lot to set up. Less so now, but I'll get into that later. I give a little shout out to Amanda Stevens for actually. I decided to pick this up and start off with the Black History Month Game Jam. And that was the first one. That was it's almost 2 years ago now. Amanda Stevens, esports journalist, she came to talk to us about safe spaces and how to make people feel welcome in a space. And very simple idea: just have events for the people you want to feel comfortable in your space. It's simple, but very effective. And it's like, okay, fine. And I decided to do the first Black History Month Game Jam. We've done this, so we're going to be doing the third one, as I mentioned earlier this evening, next February. And that was followed by the LGBTQ Game Jam, which we hold in October. So we have the first Black History Month in February, LGBTQ Game Jam in October. Actually, initially I wanted to do it in June, but we ran into some logistics issues. And my next project that I would like to add to the mix is Accessibility Jam. That one's close to my heart. For my father actually was disabled, so it's kind of something I've wanted to do. But there's a lot of planning and setup that's involved there. So I want to make sure, based on some of his experiences with programs for the disabled, I did not want to waste anyone's time, basically just pay lip service to something. So that's sort of one of the reasons it's not gotten quite to the point where we're there yet. All right, so considerations for doing these sorts of programs: making sure that you are aware of the needs of the individuals you are trying to reach. One of the things that was brought up was transportation, access to the location, access to technology. So we picked locations for these game jams where we could provide computers. We didn't have computers to provide particularly initially, so we had to use other spaces. For example, the Art Center, and also the RPI VAST Lab, so this, one of the computer labs up at RPI. And to pay attention, and I wanted to pay attention to what the participants were saying to us, what the event participants were telling us. And also to keep in mind that no group is monolithic. Nobody's going to be exactly the same. So you've got to pay attention to what people, the individual's needs. Researching issues faced by members of the group. So I would try to be aware of, what things should I consider when I want, African Americans in a space to feel comfortable in a space, So I tried providing materials for like research materials. I was researching Black history, African American history. I was researching LGBTQ history, and also just trying to be aware of it. I'm obviously not being part of those groups. I'm not going to be very, very aware, but you've got to put in the effort to do this right. Challenges that we face: reaching a community of people who are not already in your space. So we didn't have many people of color in our space. We have actually a fair number of LGBTQ plus individuals. So one of the things that I found was for Black History Month Game Jam, we didn't necessarily have the reach. We didn't necessarily reach as many people, unfortunately, initially. I'm hoping to improve that. But the LGBTQ jam, actually, the first one we did was one of the largest game jams we've ever done. So it's kind of a catch-22. You kind of overcome that barrier there. But logistics, recently it's less of an issue, but still a consideration. So trying to get a space is very difficult. When we worked with the Art Center, we could only get certain days available. Working with RPI had its own set of challenges. Don't know if anyone here has tried to get access to a computer lab at a campus. I know the IGDA has for Global Game Jam, and I don't envy you continuing to have to do that. Since we've gotten computers recently, we've been able to hold game jams in this space, so I'm really excited about that. We're also, things that came up, accommodating comfort level with computers. Some different levels of comfort. We had people with different age groups come in. So that, like I said, these groups are not monolithic. In both the first Black History Month Game Jam and the LGBTQ Game Jam, we had older participants who were more like analog. They would have been more comfortable with analog games. So that was something I I want to work into our future programs. Not everyone is prepared to spend the entire day at the event. One of the things I've noticed a lot is we have people who show up for the morning, and then they're like, okay, well, we can only stay until lunch, or we can only stay until like 1 o'clock, which is one of the things we do is teach Construct 2 and RenPy. So these are game engines that are pretty easy to learn fairly quickly and get started on a game. So if somebody stays the entire day, they should have a sizable demo, especially if they use Construct 2. But with, they're able to get enough art assets so they can make a nice visual novel as well. Actually, the last Black History Month Game Jam, it was mostly kids. Parents would drop their teenagers off and come back because they had some social event they had to go to. Then they came back later on, so it was kind of interesting. But so there was a need to be kind of flexible, that in a way that I had not expected, but luckily the tools we were using really lent themselves to that. And getting games back to their creators, especially individuals who, for some reason or other, don't have their own email addresses. I'm actually still holding on to someone's game from the first LGBTQ jam because I'm hoping to get it back to them, but I don't really have any way to contact them. So, yeah. So if someone's listening to this video and recognizes themselves, please come talk to me about your game, your RenPy game. All right, successes and motivation. We always have at least a few people, if not more, participate. We've never had an event where no one showed up. We've never had an event, so that tells me there's a need for this. Even if we don't have a lot of people, there's still people who benefit from it. Every event we've had new people come in and make games. I've never had one of these events where I've knew everybody right from the get-go. We have had people who put in extra effort to attend. Now that one's not necessarily a success. I feel like that's something that I want to make that easier for people to actually attend. But that tells me that this was important to someone. The first LGBTQ jam, one of the individuals one of the participants told me, yeah, I live up in Schenectady and I really wanted to do this, and so I took a taxi. And they were unemployed, so it was a little bit of extra, a little bit extra cost to them, but that was important to them to do that. So, and almost everyone makes a game for the first time. We've had a few exceptions to that. In one case, it was comfort level with computers. Another case, I kind of grabbed someone off the street, and they came to the door as they do at the space here, and I was like, "Hey, do you want to see how to make games?" And I went through the tutorial, and then they were like, "Oh, cool!" But they hadn't really intended to stay. So everyone else has made a game, though, out of all the people who participated. Okay, future work, the accessibility game jam. So as I say, I don't want to do this in a way that doesn't accommodate enough people, and so the accessibility game jam is going to be for people who have disabilities. These include game jams are actually open to everyone, but are supposed to be, specifically welcoming the particular groups. So I'm hoping for individuals with disabilities and those who do not have disabilities. So going to different locations in the capital region, I'd really like to be able to do this one personally. We haven't really worked on that very much, but that's something I would like to do in the future, where we have a game jam, include game jams up in Schenectady, or at a library in Albany. More materials for making analog games. I'd like to see more card games, more materials for. But in both cases, the older participants who came to the events who weren't as comfortable with technology were, in my opinion, artists. They actually were, so if given analog materials, a fair number of analog materials, they could have made something quite fantastic. So I've always looked at it as sort of a missed opportunity. Yes, you have a question?
I was going to say, that reminds me of River Jam, where I had a young girl who couldn't really make her own games because she didn't understand the program, but
Right.
She drew a lot of pictures, and I ended up incorporating her pictures into a game called Painterly Mouse, because one of the characters she drew was a mouse. So I just basically kind of took a picture or scanned the artwork and incorporated it into a simple game. But luckily, I don't know if she brought her own paper or we had paper there, but I think we might have had paper and stuff there that she could draw with. So
That's cool. Yeah, oddly enough, I haven't seen much collaboration happen at the Include Jams that I've run. Mostly people want to make their own game, so it's pretty cool. Maybe we should try to encourage more collaboration too. That's a good point. Thanks. Okay, and making the events regular fixtures for the TVGS calendar. So we've already done that with Black History Month Game Jam. Doing that with LGBTQ Game Jam, we've done it 2 years. I'm determined to do it again next October. So that's kind of my goal. So that's my talk about diversity and game jams. Does anyone have any questions or anything else to add? No? Awesome. Okay, cool.
What are your what are your plans in making the accessibility game jam? I believe in this case, most of the game jams were planned for 1 day long, but I believe you said that you
Yes.
wanted to make the accessibility game jam, understandably so, a month long.
Yeah, that's actually one of the things I've noticed about game jams. Length of game jams, they can be tricky to do that, because the first game jams I understand were two days long.
Right.
But I switched to a format where it was 1 day long, which was a lot less intimidating, I think. But the accessibility game jam, I'm pretty sure, needs to be possibly a month long. We want to. There are different challenges associated with creating a game that's accessible, and the tools and learning the tools that are available for individuals who have disabilities. So giving someone a month, maybe having regular meetings during that month, every Saturday or every Sunday. So yeah, just getting that down, I think it needs that kind of time commitment, I think.
Yeah, that's understandable, because playing around with custom controllers in general, regardless of whether it's accessibility based or not, is a fairly difficult task.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and we're gonna need some time, and I need some time to. There are a lot of different tools for helping someone who's like visually impaired interact with, or be able to use programming, and figuring out how to do that it's a challenge, especially since I don't have that challenge. Well, I technically, if as it's been pointed out, I found a lot on the internet. I can't really see properly. I have glasses, but it's a more mainstream version of the issue. So I'm not very well versed in the challenges. So becoming aware of those kinds of challenges in a way that's genuine is hard. So.
Another question I had was, what do you do to gather materials for each of these game jams? So as an example, in the Black History Month, we, in almost all of them, we've gathered a couple of books and materials for the people for attendees to review and look through. Where do you get those?
Well, so it's got two components. I generally basically just hit Google and search for any kind of websites and resources online for stuff on Black History Month, or African American history, or I just take a look at what's available, and I try to find as broad a categories as possible. From different points in history. So that was sort of and different disciplines. I wanted to make sure it was a good kind of cross section. I go to the library. I grabbed, I don't know, I have actually bought books because I was like, you know what, this would be a good book to have on hand. I have some books from back when I was in college that I bring to the Black History Month Game Jam. I try to bring a variety. I've picked up books for kids. I've picked up books for adults. Just trying to cover as many bases as possible. It's a lot easier to do it with online stuff, though. But the library is a great resource, though. So yeah, I think I picked up visual novel, not visual novel, graphic novel, March, which I read through, and I was like, it was a very good reason for me to look at it. I don't necessarily have a lot of time for reading because I'm always busy, but it was good to take the time and read that. Also, I grabbed the book Hidden Figures. I was like, yes, nerds. Math. But yeah, so that's basically I try to increase my own library and use the library and grab as many things as I can. I usually have a packet of information that I load up onto the computers with links, and I test those links every time, make sure they still work. I don't always, so I have to find more stuff. That's cool. Yes, Solana?
Me?
Yes.
I've done a few of these, not all of them, but I know it's very limited based on availability of the space, but I personally like doing the game jams here just because it gave us the option of having more time or having multiple days. So I'm looking forward to either having enough computers here or just having the ability to do it here, because I always felt like when the game jam is only half a day or something, it really limits how much you can create a game, because it just takes a long time. And having the option of going a full day or 2 days really helps to kind of polish a game and make it something you're proud of rather than just, a demo.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think part of the problem is also balancing for brand new game developers who a 2-day game jam might be intimidating. So I'm a little concerned about that. Muse, did you have a question or? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. No, okay. Yeah, basically, it's a balancing act. I don't want to I want to give people enough time to make games, make a game they can be proud of, but also I want to make sure people feel like they can come into the space and aren't going to be like, oh, that's a big commitment right there. So, yeah. So, but yes, since we've gotten our laptops, so excited about that. I'm so happy about those laptops. We can definitely tailor it to whatever we feel like it needs, whatever is as long as short or as short as it needs to be.